Hey everyone, so this is season 6, Chicago Fire, season 6, episodes 18 and 19. I haven't been putting up much videos, especially this last week, is because of the fact that I have been sick this last week. I'm a lot better than I was last week, but I'm still a little sick, just have a little postnasal drip and all that, so, but I'm pretty much good. So, episode 18 is called When They See Us Coming, and um, it starts off with, Stella, Severide, and his parents going to dinner or breakfast, and he is not that happy about the fact that his parents are getting back together. So he is basically, acting all quiet and all that, and abruptly ends the breakfast to go to work. Stella thinks that he's mad at her, but he's not. He just says, I'm just mad. Um, so, uh, Meanwhile, 51, Otis is, uh, seeing everyone just clutter things on Connie's desk when she just doesn't like that. So Matt ends up asking him how physical therapy is going, and he's like, well, it's going really slowly, and I just thought it'd be further along at this point. Matt's just like, dude, just take it one step at a time, because if you don't, you're gonna end up uh, delaying it even further than how much you want. So, but so I'm gonna shift gears a little bit here and just talk about the bigger storyline. And the big storyline in this episode is that the feds are trying to find this guy named, oh, what's his name? His name is Martin Becerra, who murdered a fellow federal agent in St. Louis, and they're thinking that he is going to come to Chicago to lay low with his brother, whose name is Maurice, and so they're commandeering, if you want to say, 51 for the foreseeable future to uh, see if Martin will end up coming to visit his brother Maurice. So much of the episode, they're tracking Martin's cell phone activity, uh, like whenever his cell phone comes back on, like gets turned back on, and eventually Martin does end up coming to makes his way to Chicago. Uh, but not before that happens, though, we see this this agent called by the last name of Scoville, who was the partner of the federal agent who got shot and was killed, and um, he is obviously gunning for this Martin dude, because why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't he want revenge? So he is ready. He's trigger happy. He wants Martin dead, um, and all that. And so basically, um, eventually Martin, as I said, ends up coming to Chicago, and uh, Matt and Casey, or Matt and Severide have this idea that they can go into uh, Matt more so has this idea that uh, like I think it was early in the season, they had this call where they were called out to a prison, and and they they found out that one of the prisoners uh, had a had a thing out for, not really a thing out for, but like he had an issue. Like one of the inmates had an issue with the warden and wanted to kill the warden, and so the only way that they could really get the warden out safely and alive is to dress him up as a firefighter, and since people really trust, and they wouldn't necessarily, think that the firefighters are trying to deceive them. So they had dressed the warden up as a firefighter to get him out of the um, place safely. And so he has the idea of, dressing the FBI agents up as firefighters to make everyone think um, that they aren't FBI agents, and so it pretty much works up until the point when Severide and Kate and Matt knock on the door, excuse me, of Maurice's apartment, and that's when things take a turn, and Maurice and Martin pull out their guns and use Severide and Matt as, human shields to get out safely and all that. And then the FBI agents surround them, and as they're dressed in, firefighter clothing, and end up shooting both Maurice and Martin dead. Um, and then at the end of the episode, we find out that, uh, well, before we get to that, Severide confronts his father Benny about how he feels like Benny is just putting on an act, that he's going to be father and husband of the year, and how he and he's just going to end up doing what he did to his mother all over again, just 20-30 years later. And so fast forward to the end of the episode where Jennifer is packing and she's crying her eyes out, saying Benny ended things, saying that, he doesn't deserve her and all that. So Severide's clearly looking bad about his role in this, and saying, well, I think it's my fault, Mom, that this happened. And she's like, I know it's your fault, because Benny wouldn't have come said all this stuff on his own. So she believes that Benny cares more about what Severide thinks that he went on. So Jennifer asks Severide to go get her purse from his bedroom, and she tells Stella when Severide goes to get her purse that between her and Benny, they really did number on Severide, for Stella to not give up on him. So that's episode 18. So episode 19 is called Where I Want to Be. And the major storyline of this whole episode, it has to do with a Mexican drug cartel and their house having caught on fire. And everyone goes to this call at the beginning of the episode. And so what happens is they get to the house, they all go in to help find and rescue people, and what ends up happening is Matt tells Cordova to stick with Stella, but he doesn't do that because, as we find out later in the episode, he thought he saw someone, like a kid, running away, and followed him to make sure that he could save him if he was hurt. and he ended up losing him in the room next to the kitchen, which is in the back of the house. Um, and um, so he ended up going through the kitchen and out the back door in the kitchen, and that's where Casey or Matt, ends up seeing him exit when Matt, Herman, and Mouch end up saving one of the people in the front of the house, and bring them out the front door. Um, but Matt doesn't know this until towards the end of the episode, or towards the middle of the episode. No, towards the end of the episode. Yeah, towards the end of the episode. Um, but before he gets told of this, Cordova, there was. So before Matt ends up getting any word of this from Cordova about the guy he was following, um, the Mexican drug cartel had is convinced that there was $100,000 that had gone missing from the house, because there was a hell of a lot more money that the news said wasn't found uh, at the house. So the Mexican drug cartel are killing everyone who they think might have taken the money until they find the person who actually did take the money, and that's pretty much the major plot of the story, of the episode, and uh, eventually they end up going back to the house and finding. First Matt and Severide look at the schematics of the house and find that there's a little part of the wall in the room next to the kitchen that appears might be hollow, and so they end up going back to the house and pulling the bookcase in front of the wall and finding a dead body in there, the person that Cordova saw. and and they find the missing money on the dead body, and then that's pretty much the major story of this episode. The subplot for the major plot was that Matt thought Cordova stole the money and doesn't outright accuse him, but in a roundabout way does accuse him, but it turns out he didn't do it. So Cordova ends up, Matt offers to extend Cordova's stay at 51, but Cordova declines, and two other little storylines with this episode where Herman's son Lee Henry wanted the garage apartment for himself, and so Herman decided to let Lee Henry work for some money to pay for the apartment. What ends up happening is Lee Henry ends up watching pornography in that apartment, and Cindy ends up walking in on him, and so he's not allowed to use the apartment anymore. Three little storylines outside of the big one. So what ends up happening? Stella decides to take the apartment, because she gets information about how Severide was married, before. Um, and she doesn't want to feel, she doesn't want to be, um, she doesn't want to feel like she's a mistake or a, a rush into anything. So she decides to move out, but Sunrise like, well, wherever you are, I will be there too. And they end up kissing at the end of the episode, which I kind of liked. I kind of enjoyed them, being all cutesy and shit. Uh, and then the last little tidbit is Otis, who's still feeling the need to rush everything um, with his physical therapy. And at the beginning of the episode, he has his first assessment, and it doesn't go over that well because he let slip that he trains, um, or he does like certain training 3 times per week instead of like 2 times, or 3 times per day instead of like 2 times per day, and so he's overexerting himself, and he gets told that he won't get the okay to go back to work um, unless he stops, overexerting himself. And so at the end of the episode, he gets, as he's waiting to do his second assessment, he gets a flood of texts saying he's got, the assessment in the bag and all that. So hopefully he won't, or he will ends up getting passed and all that. So tonight on Chicago Fire, both Bowden and Sarai get envelopes full of cash, and it looks like someone's trying to bribe the both of them, which might end up costing Bowden his job. As far as I know, um, what's his name? I can't remember the guy's name. Trying to remember who plays Bowden, but let me just look him up real quick. Amon Walker. I don't know if he has any major projects coming up, but that might make him leave, because they've been hinting at him, possibly leaving the last few episodes. So um, I don't know if he has any, TV shows or other TV shows or movies coming out that he might be in. But they've been hinting at him possibly leaving, so hopefully he won't. But I don't think so, just because he seems like he's going to be, if they have another season, it looks like he's still going to be there, as far as I know. I haven't heard that they wouldn't get another season, but you never know. 6 seasons is a good run for any show nowadays. I mean, look at SVU. SVU's been on for almost 20 years, so. But with that, I will see you guys later, hopefully tomorrow for episode 20, and I'll see you guys later.